Greetings, this is Jim Lindsay. This is a CIS lesson over WebSpace, and what I'm going to do is show you how to turn on your WebSpace at WKU. You are charged for it through your student fees, whether you use it or not. And so I know how to use it, and we're creating documents in this course which you can put into that space. So let's show you how to use it. Let's get started. First thing I want you to do is just create a text file on your desktop and just call it whatever your first name is. Just name it that. So my name is Jim, so I'm going to create one called jim.text, and we're going to put that on our desktops. We'll come back to this lesson and the FTP lesson, which come right after it. They go hand in hand, and so let's create this file. We'll put it there. We're not actually going to get to it right at the end of this lesson, but I anticipate that you're going to watch these in one after the other, and so this will have that file ready for you. So how would you do that? Very easily. I'm going to go to my desktop. I'm just going to right click, go to new text document. I'm going to call it Jim. So jim.text, that's all I have to do. I'm going to open it up. I'll just double click it to open it. This is the default text editor that opens up in Microsoft Windows. It's a very simple program. All you can do is create text documents with it. I'm going to type this. Well, maybe I will. This is a sentence. Okay, and when I get to the portion of the lesson where we actually put that into our space, my file will be ready. I'm going to go to File, Save, and then I'll exit that guy out. So I now have something to put into my WebSpace. Jim.text is what I'm going to put there. Once that's been put there, then I'll get more complicated and fancy, but that's a really good test to just see if the basic transmission works right. So that's what we'll do first. Let me jump back into this presentation, and hopefully you're following along. You have the pause button in the lower left corner of the screen, so pause the presentation, jump out to your machine, make your text file, save it there, and then when you need it, you'll be able to access it. So what is WebSpace? Well, WebSpace is literally just storage space on a hard drive that's accessible to people viewing web pages. That's all it is. And so look at the picture in front of you. This big computer on the right is supposed to represent a web server. These computers over here are supposed to represent people using computers like you and me, just your typical viewers of web pages. And when you request a page from a web server, when one of us says, hey ESPN, give me your home page, the web server serves it up to us. That's why it's called a server. And the web space from which that is provided to us is simply a hard drive. What does a hard drive look like? Well, this is a picture of an older style hard drive. Many of these are still being used, but they are platter-based storage devices, and if you've taken CIS 141 or CS 145, you've learned all about how the surfaces of those disks can be charged with positive or negative charges, which indicate ones or zeros, and the resulting process can be Word documents or Excel spreadsheets or web pages or whatever, but that's what a hard drive looks like on the inside. Your newer hard drives, the solid state drives, also called SSDs, those are like great big thumb drives, and they don't have any moving parts. They're really nice, but they're expensive, and they're not quite as large. You can't store as much stuff on them yet economically as you can on these older platter-based ones. This arm moves back and forth like a record player and retrieves the positive or negative charges off of that charged surface there. So that's what a hard drive looks like. So back to our image here. On this web server, there's a hard disk. It's a platter, and somewhere on that hard disk is a bunch of data that can be accessed by these guys from the outside. Now, to turn on your web space at Western's web server, all you have to do is submit a form. You go to a web page and you submit that form. Here's what the website address is for that form. I have a link on the Blackboard page as well, and you input your NetID and password to get your space turned on. So let's do that. All right, I'm on the Blackboard site for the WebSpace lesson. You'll see there is that you're watching that movie. Good job. And here are the slides. If you want my slides, you can download those and do whatever you need to with them. This link right here, Give Me My Space, it opens up the web page you need to turn on your WebSpace. You just put in your NetID and your password, and you click on Activate My Web Account. Now, when you do that, it may take 20 minutes for the process to complete, but once you do, you're going to then have a web address. It's going to be people.wku.edu/ in the first part of your email address, and then you can start to put your stuff in there. You can put anything you want as long as it's not pornographic, as long as it's not like hate speech. You could put stuff for classes, you could put stuff for your clubs that you're in, you could put stuff for your your just personal interest. You have a tremendous amount of flexibility with that. I'm going to show you how to do that in just a minute, but let's go back to the slide presentation again. You fill this out, click on Activate My Web Account, and if you've done this for other classes, like if you've taken my CIS 141 classes, we may have done this in class together. And so doing this a second time is not a destructive process. You're not going to mess up your space that you activated with me. Or if you took CIS 243 or CIS 321 and did it in those classes, you're not going to mess up your space here. But this just tells the administrators at the IT department, hey, I plan to use my web space, please turn it on. Now, let me jump back to the presentation. All right, your web space, your web address, excuse me, looks like this. It's people.wku.edu/, and that is the one that's right alongside the question mark on your keyboard, and then the first part of your email address at WKU. So everybody has an @topper.wku.edu address, and whatever the first part of that is, that's what goes right behind the people.wku.edu. When we visit that site in just a moment, you're not going to see what looks like this. Once we start to create folders, you'll start to see things like this. But actually, when you go to the root of your space, which is what that is, you're going to actually get a notification saying like, hey, directory listings are not permitted here. And I'll show that to you in just a minute. If you ever watch the television show Person of Interest, there's the character called Root, R-O-O-T, and Root has significance. The word root has significance in computer senses. The base level of your storage stuff is called the root level. The account which you use to log in as the administrator to run the computer is the root access machine, the root access account. So when I talk about at the root level, people are not going to be able to see your files. That's what I'm referring to. Let me show you what that looks like in our case. Okay, I've logged into the server for MySpace. All I can get into is MySpace. That's all. I mean, I could look at your space as far as whatever you posted for me, for outsiders to see. But I can't do any sort of administration, or I can't bother your files. That's the really cool thing about WebSpace. It's your personal space there. Now, and that doesn't mean, now don't get confused, that doesn't mean you can put something that's, don't ever post anything in WebSpace that's sensitive or something you don't want other people to see. It's quite the contrary. It's, if you put something in your web space, and anybody can look at it, but what I meant is that they just can't manipulate it. They can't add things to it. They can't delete it, but they can see it. So don't put, like, if you're KFC, don't put the 11 herbs and spices in your web space, because everybody's going to be able to see it. But at this level, at the root level here of our account, not too long ago, WKU implemented this security policy basically that said directory listings are not allowed. And so what that means is if you get this message when you go to visit your space, your application or your submission of that form to turn in your web space worked. You have web space. And so now all we need to do is start storing stuff in here, and then we can go directly to that address, or we need to put folders in here, which you could then see the directory listings for. And I'll give you an example of that. Let me go, I'll just add CIS 141 to this. This is a folder I have in my WebSpace, and you'll see like I have a whole bunch of stuff in here, and that's the root right there, the gym.lindsay level. If you add a folder onto it, CIS 141, it has to be lowercase there. That's how I created the folder. Then you could start to see my directory listings. And so that's WebSpace. So if you get this message right here, directory listings are not allowed, then great, you have succeeded in turning on your WebSpace. Okay, so what are we going to do with this? Well, what you do is you create HTML files, and then you save those to that storage space, that web space, using some sort of software that's specifically designed for that. In our case, we're going to use File Transfer Protocol software. And the specific program I'm going to show you how to use is called FileZilla. I'll show that to you in the FTP lesson. But traditionally, up until just the last couple of years, anytime people made websites, this is how it happened. You made all your websites offline, and then once you were done, once you had the completed product, you would FTP those to your space. And that still goes on. I mean, that still goes on at the majority of websites that exist. But we also have this whole new class of websites that's coming along through things called like content management systems. Again, those content management systems, a good example of that would be Wix or Foursquare. Those two examples allow you to log into the server, make your changes right there on the server, and then it's immediately live. You don't do any of the work on your own computer. So although that's great and that's a good solution for some people, that's obviously not the only solution, and it's not the solution for most websites. So in most cases, you have web developers that are making the websites offline and then FTPing, File Transfer Protocol, transferring those things to WebSpace. And so that's what you're learning how to do in this WebSpace and the FTP lessons. Once that file has been stored or saved to that storage space on the web server, then a visitor can view it in their browser. And your browsers are Internet Explorer, Firefox, Chrome, Safari, all those sorts of programs. This is a screenshot of what that FileZilla program is going to look like, and we're going to spend time learning how to use this. And it's easy. None of this stuff is hard. I think what I hope is that this is going to be I hope this is going to be pleasantly disappointing when you realize how easy it can be to create HTML and then put it into WebSpace. Because if you've not done it before, you may have the impression that it's really difficult and it's kind of like black magic voodoo stuff, and it's not. So hopefully it's pleasantly disappointing. So we're going to spend detailed time on that in another lesson, so I'm going to skip on through that, but that's what the interface looks like for that FileZilla FTP program. Where we want to finish up is with a discussion of domain names, where you purchase those, and what domain names are, because if you go into business for yourself, you probably are going to need a website, and whether you put that together through a content management system like Wix or Foursquare, or whether you do it from scratch, you're still going to have to buy that domain name. And so let's make sure we understand what those are, and then you'll see how that ties into the web space. Both of those, they go hand in hand. You have to have both. So the domain name is the web address or the URL, and web addresses look like what you see right there. If you've taken a CIS 141 class, I'm sure you've learned the breakdown of these. Essentially, you have multiple parts. You have a protocol that's in place, and that's either going to be HTTP or HTTPS for the most part. You have the domain name itself, which is what you pay money to a registrar for. Within that domain name, you have a top-level domain. These folders that I mentioned earlier, I told you about the CIS 141 folder. That's what we used as an example in my space. These are just folders. They're directories. And so we refer to those as paths or directories or folders within your space. And then finally we have individual files which we actually view. And so you've seen that when in the chapter 8 lesson and then in the calendars lesson when we created an HTML file, when we had Visio create an HTML file for us through the export process. It created that file. And so somebody, when they want to look at our page, they request the individual file, the HTML, and it's going to be stored in a domain name and probably a specific path or folder, and then they're going to get that individual file, and then it's going to show up on their computer. So that's what a domain name is, and where you get these from is from a company called a registrar. Just like if think about when you want to sign up for classes at WKU, you have to do that through TopNet, which is basically run by the registrar. These companies are all working under one international body called ICANN. It's the International Consortium of Assigned Names and Numbers. And so that's important because this international body has to make sure that there's just one of each different domain name. So for example, there can only be one Pepsi.com, there can only be one KentuckyFriedChicken.com or one Google.com. If there was more than one, when somebody typed an address, a URL or web address into their address bar of their browser, the computer wouldn't know what to do with it, right? So these name registrars work in conjunction with ICANN, that international body, to make sure that everybody is just issuing a single copy of those names. All right, so let me show you how to do that. So I'm going to get out of PowerPoint. I'm done with PowerPoint. I'm going to jump back into Blackboard. And in Blackboard, I have several links for you. One is this domain name registration at GoDaddy.com and then web hosting and secure pages. So I'm going to look at these 3 different pages from GoDaddy. And GoDaddy is a registrar. You've probably heard of GoDaddy if you've ever watched major sporting events like NASCAR events or the Super Bowl or the World Series. I mean, they advertise pretty heavily at sporting events. And so what GoDaddy's business is, they provide companies with these with domain names as well as hosting and some other services. And so let's take a look at their site and see how that works. I'm going to open up this link right here. It brings me right here. And what this tells me is, hey, user, why don't you see if there's some domain name that you're interested in. I'll tell you whether it's available or not, and I'll tell you how much it costs. And it tells me there are different deals on various different top-level domains like .com, .net, .club. These are different domain names that are available, and you can scroll through the page and look at this. But I'll put some random words in here, and we'll see if we can come up with something see if something is available. I was thinking of something random, talking about green pencil frog. Let's see if that's available. So green pencil frog, that should be available. That's pretty silly. So when I hit search, is green pencil frog something I could get? And yes, it is. Woohoo! I'm in luck. I can buy greenpencilfrog.com today, and it gives me some other deals here. I could also get .net, .org.info for an additional $17. And what I'm getting for my money is just the right to use this name for a specified period of time. Typically, you're getting that for a year at a minimum. But a lot of people will buy these in blocks for like 3 years, 10 years, because once you build up brand recognition with your domain name, you want to maintain that. And so this name right here is available. I can scroll down here and it tells me all these different other choices. I could get XYZ, .us, .life, .energy, and you'll see some of these are really cheap, like .xyz is only 99 cents. Why is greenpencilfrog.xyz only 99 cents? Because that's a freaky top-level domain. Who in the world puts XYZ at the end of their website addresses? And so if you want recognition, most people are going to certainly go for .com. Now, what also will happen when people buy a domain name, they'll also get misspellings of it. Let's say, like, I was afraid people were going to spell the word pencil wrong. I could buy, in addition to greenpencilfrog.com spelled correctly, I could spell it get additional domain names that included all those various misspellings. And what you do is, once you buy all those different names, you just direct all of the domain names to a single file where you've got your stuff hosted. And so no matter how badly they misspell it, they still come to you. So if you're trying to prevent a competitor from copying you, or if you have a hard to spell name, let's say you have like chrysanthemum.com, I can guarantee you I'm probably going to mistype chrysanthemum at least once or twice or 3 times if I try to do it 3 times. And so in doing so, if I have these multiple spelling domain names as the owner, I'm going to get more traffic to my site. And so this is a registrar, GoDaddy.com. You come to this domain area to do searches to see whether your domain name that you want is available. If it is, you select it and you go through the purchase process. All you need is a credit card. You can see that it's very inexpensive. Now, on top of that, you're also going to need hosting. And WebSpace, this whole thing you just learned about, WebSpace, that's hosting. And so, as a student at WKU, you obviously have space that you're paying for. You have hosting that you've already paid for. But if you're a business person, you aren't. And so, unless you have your own computers, which you run as web servers, which may be a possibility, but if you don't have your own dedicated IT department, that may be something that you just don't want to do. And so you hire someone like GoDaddy to do that for you, and it's very inexpensive. Let's look at the hosting options we have. So as you come to the this link right here from Blackboard, it talks about web hosting from GoDaddy. You can see these different plans, and you can see they're as inexpensive as $8, $10, $15 a month for your hosting, and they give you plenty of space here. You can read the details, but in addition to your name, you're also going to need to buy hosting from somewhere. Now you'll see that with each of these hosting plans, you get things like storage, you get email addresses. So if I had like greenpencilfrog.com, I could also have 100 email addresses. So I could have Jim at greenpencilfrog.com or Lee at greenpencilfrog.com and so on. So you get all these different services the more that you're willing to pay. I've used GoDaddy for a really long time, well 15 plus years, and I really like this company, and so I have no problem recommending GoDaddy to you if you're looking for a host or you're looking for a domain name registrar. I've also used Wix a long time, and Wix is a that content management system company, and so if you're in the market for either of those, I think you'd be pretty pleased with the service you get from both of these companies. But this is what hosting is, and this is how much it costs. There are literally hundreds of companies that do this. The competition is fierce. The prices are all pretty similar. The if you were this kind of company, the profit margins you'd have would be so slim. This would be a hard business to make it in because there are so many players. But and because of that, that's another reason I really like this company, is because they're established, they've been there a long time, and they'll take care of you. Please note that this hosting that you get for these low prices, this is not secure hosting. And what that means is, if you're going to sell things to people, in addition to this money that you're going to pay right here, you also will want to get a secure, an SSL certificate. And what that means is, at for the pages of your site, when people go to check out to buy things, you want to make sure that the traffic, the data that gets sent back and forth is encrypted, and that way your customers don't become the victims of identity theft because of purchases with you. So I've provided one more link in the Blackboard site, the secure pages at GoDaddy.com, and it looks like this. And what it tells you, as you come down here and look at this, for an additional fee for one site, it would be about $56 a year, and so on. You can protect your websites with an SSL, a secure socket layer certificate, and in doing so, basically you'll be able to collect credit card information, social security card information, anything that would be sensitive. So, for a relatively low rate between the domain name and then just the hosting, and then like a single SSL certificate, you can get online and do business and collect credit card information for your business. So if you've never done this before, that's how it's done. And so GoDaddy and Wix, two different companies I would recommend to you for doing these sort of things. But there are many more, and just because I like those two doesn't make them the only two out there. So that's our WebSpace. To sum up, if you can go to people.wku.edu / and then the first part of your email address and get that's where you want to be. If you're still getting some sort of error message like saying this doesn't exist, then we've got a problem. Let me try and find one that's let me try something that doesn't exist. I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back. I put in Dumbledore. No, that's stupid. I'm sorry, but people.wku.edu / Dumbledore. If you get a 404 page not found error, then something in your activation process failed. Okay, instead of getting this 404 page error, what you want to get is this directory listings not allowed. This is good news. So in your next lesson, where you learn about FTP software, if you're getting this message right here, then you'll be able to access your site and put stuff in it and then look at it in a browser. If you're getting this 404 error, you're not going to be able to connect to your space because your space doesn't exist yet. So make sure that you at least get that, and that is accomplished by going to this form right here, the IT division website hosting form, filling that out and clicking on activate my web account. Thanks for your time and attention. I'll see you at the next lesson when we learn about FTP software.